I always thought that at 72, life would finally slow down. I imagine mornings spent with a warm cup of tea, afternoons tending to my garden, evenings watching my grandson laugh on the porch while I knit. Peaceful, predictable, full of love, but instead, I found myself staring at a forged signature, my signature, on a mortgage document, but threatened to take away the one thing I had left, my home. And worse, that betrayal didn't come from strangers. It came from my own family. Let me take you back. I was never the type to complain. My husband passed nearly 15 years ago, and from that moment I carried myself with quiet strength. I helped raise my son, Kevin, into adulthood. I cooked, I cleaned, I supported him through college, through his first job, through every heartbreak and triumph. I thought that bond, that sacred mother-child bond, would hold steady until my final days, but I was wrong. When Kevin married Amber, I welcomed her with open arms. I truly did. I baked her favorite desserts. I gave her the quilt my mother had made for me when I married. I thought, at last, I'll have a daughter too. But Amber, she never wanted me. I saw it in the way her smile tightened when I offered to help, the way her eyes darted when I spoke at family dinners. To her, I wasn't family. I was a burden, and slowly, Kevin began to echo her tone. It started with small things. My opinion wasn't asked anymore. Then my presence wasn't necessary. Suddenly, holidays became too busy, and when my grandson Dylan was born, my sweet, beautiful boy, I thought maybe that love would pull us close again, but instead, Amber made sure I was kept at arm's length. Visits became shorter than less frequent, and when I offered to babysit, she declined with a sharp smile. "We've got it under control, Maggie." Pause. Voice soft. "Do you know what it feels like to stand outside your own family's home, holding a gift and be told, now isn't a good time?" I do. Still, I endured, because that's what mothers do. But endurance has limits. The breaking point came one evening when I was called into the living room. Kevin and Amber sat me down with papers spread across the table. Amber did the talking, of course. "Maggie," she said, her voice honeyed and sharp, "we've had to refinance. Things are tight, you understand. We'll need you to sign these so the bank knows everything's in order." I looked at the stack. My name was already scribbled across the bottom, except I hadn't signed a thing that my chest tightened. My own son, my flesh and blood, looked away. That's when the truth sank in. They hadn't asked me. They had already taken. I whispered, "You forged my name." Kevin's jaw clenched. Amber smirked. "Don't be dramatic, Maggie. It's just paperwork." Pause, let it sting. Just paperwork? It was my home, my security, my life. And they had stolen it with the flick of a pen. I stood shaking and said the only word that gave me power in that moment. "No." Amber's mask dropped. Kevin's silence screamed louder than any words. And just like that, I was no longer mother, no longer grandmother. I was an obstacle. Within a month, I was pushed out of the house I had lived in for 40 years. They told neighbors I was downsizing, but the truth? I was discarded. Pause, heavy. I rented a small apartment across town. The kind with thin walls where you hear every neighbor's argument. I sat at night in silence, clutching framed photos of Dylan, wondering if he even remembered me. And yet, betrayal has a way of sharpening the mind. I started digging. Every afternoon, I walked to the library and pored over mortgage laws. I spoke quietly with the bank teller I'd known since my husband was alive. And what I found made my blood boil. Amber hadn't just forged my name once. She had been siphoning money, stacking debts in my name, gambling with the very roof over our heads. She thought I'd be too old, too fragile, too meek to fight back, but she forgot one thing. A mother who has lost everything has nothing left to fear. I hired a lawyer. A sharp, no-nonsense woman named Carla who looked me dead in the eye and said, "They messed with the wrong grandma." Together, we built the case. Every false signature, every suspicious withdrawal, every whispered lie. For months, I lived between rage and exhaustion. But I endured. I documented. I prepared Dot, and then, like fate itself stepping in, Dylan knocked on my apartment door one rainy evening. He was 16 now, taller than me, but his eyes, oh, those eyes, still held the same warmth. He said, "Grandma, I can't live with them anymore. Can I stay with you?" In that moment, my broken heart pieced itself back together. I let him in. And when he saw the stacks of papers, the evidence of what his parents had done, he didn't flinch. He placed his hand over mine and said, "Then let's fight them together." The day of court arrived like a storm. Amber strutted in first, heels clicking against the polished floor, confidence dripping off her like cheap perfume. Kevin trailed behind, eyes dark, jaw tight. They thought they'd spin their charm, manipulate, dismiss. They thought I'd tremble, but when the judge asked for evidence, Carla and I laid it all bare. Page after page, signature after forged signature, accounts drained, lies stacked on lies. The courtroom buzzed with whispers as the picture sharpened. Amber wasn't a victim. She was a predator. Kevin avoided my gaze. Amber's smirk cracked into panic. And then, the moment I'll never forget, the judge leaned forward and said, "Mrs. Thompson, what you and your husband have done is fraud. Serious fraud. You've placed your mother's livelihood at risk for personal gain." The silence that followed was delicious. Amber sputtered, "She's old. She doesn't even understand what." "Enough," the judge cut her off. "You'll be held accountable." That was the day their empire of lies crumbled. Ruling stripped them of control over my house, voided the fraudulent mortgage, and opened a criminal investigation. Amber's reputation, carefully curated in community circles, dissolved overnight. Neighbors whispered, friends vanished, doors closed, and Kevin, my son, he was left standing in the wreckage he had chosen. When we walked out of that courthouse, Dylan at my side, cameras flashing, reporters shouting, I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The image said it all. The grandmother they cast aside, now walking free, while they stumbled under the weight of their own greed. Revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't violent. It was precise. It was watching them unravel in the very spotlight they craved. Dylan was with me now. We cooked dinner together. We laugh. We rebuild. Sometimes late at night, I still ache for the boy I raised, the Kevin who once held my hand and promised to look after me. But I remind myself, betrayal is a choice. And he chose her. I chose survival. And I won. So if you ever find yourself doubting your strength, remember this, even at 72, even after being betrayed, even when the world thinks you're finished, you can rise, you can fight, and you can win, because sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply living free while those who tried to break you choke on the ruins of their own schemes.